So thanks for joining us for this conversation about the hiring of teachers. Trinity does a lot of hiring. It's interesting to think for a small, relatively small organization. Over the course of 24 years, there have been a lot of people. A lot of people have come and stayed for a long time, but we also have people that cycle in and out of the school, and we spend a lot of time and energy as leaders interviewing, discerning, hiring, onboarding new faculty, and it's a joy. It's a lot of work, and you all do a lot of the heavy lifting as division directors. So thank you for that. I want to share with our parents some in this conversation about how we go about this and what we're looking for. So I wonder if there's a story from your past here at Trinity of hiring that you remember that is emblematic of the kind of teachers that God brings to Trinity and that we've been able to find. Warren, do you have a story you could start us out with?
Sure. I think of Evan Kate. We were excited to have Mr. Kate with us, first just teaching a section of New Testament Greek.
I think he came in to help me.
He did come in, yeah. And he was interested in teaching, and we saw in him the potential for someone who could do more around here, and saw that opportunity to really get to know him. At the same time, we had a search open for a full-time humanities teacher who was going to teach Model UN. It's a very specific search for us. And we interviewed a number of promising candidates, and the best one standing by far was Mr. Kate. And so that's one hire that I remember really fondly, just getting to know him and seeing him as someone's going to be a fantastic hire, and he certainly turned out to be that.
Yeah, and it's been great to watch him grow as a teacher and to take on additional leadership responsibilities. He's a department chair now of our theology department, and yeah, that is a great story. Matt, do you have a teacher you're thinking of, or?
Sure. We have a nice relationship with the Durham Nativity School at Trinity, and we've had opportunities from members of their school to come and visit ours. And during those trips, a man named Ricky Oliver would often come. He was an important part of their team, and we would joke usually at the end that he would be a wonderful addition to Trinity if he ever decided he didn't want to be at Durham Nativity School. Now, we didn't want him to leave Durham Nativity School, but he did get to a point where he was looking for something else, and his interactions with us led him to Trinity, and we started a conversation about what it might like to be to teach 7th grade history at Trinity. And after a time thinking together, he decided that Trinity was a place he'd like to be, and he's been a tremendous addition to the middle school in so many ways. No one incorporates their faith into their teaching the way that Ricky Oliver does, and so it's been a great blessing for us, and a lot of our teachers come from relationships in that way.
Yeah, it's true. Those connections, word of mouth for teacher recruitment is important just as it is in admissions. It's not the only way, but it is an important way, yeah. Amy, you have been with us a shorter amount of time, but you have been involved in hiring here, and I don't know if there's a story that you'd like to share.
When we hired Lori Jablonski for 2nd grade, she had been on campus a number of times as a substitute. And so it was a wonderful opportunity to see her in the classroom, to watch how she enjoys the different age groups that are in the lower school. And she was here many times, so teachers got to know her, parents got to know her, and students recognized her. And so when we had the opportunity to hire her, it was a natural fit, and we're thrilled that she was able to join us.
Yeah. And that's a good story for us to remember too, because Lori came in to replace a teacher who had been really here, not quite at the beginning, but here for such a long time, Karen Bone, and was so important to the program, and so to see what it's like that happens in the life of schools, is that teachers transition and they leave, and then the Lord brings us other folks. So that's a good story to remember. I'm also hearing a theme here it's not true for every teacher, but there is, in the 3 stories that you told, these were people that we had gotten to know, right? We had ways of that. That's one of our challenges, right? As a school, is to know. We want the people that are going to be teaching here to know Trinity and our distinctive culture and mission, and we want to know them, and we want to see them in action. So whether it's through substituting or through being here for a part-time teaching position or interacting through our partnership with another school, those kind of opportunities are invaluable. We don't always get that, right? And we're going to probably hear some other stories of sometimes we have to interview somebody from Texas and they're just come in for 2 days, and that's a different kind of thing, but it certainly is part of what we do. Let's talk a little bit about what we look for in teachers, and you all mentioned this in the intro, but I'd love to hear you go a little deeper. What are some of the things that stand out for you when you're looking at an application or you're meeting someone? What are you looking for? Who wants to grab that one?
I mean, for me, what I'm looking for first is how strong is their faith, and what will they bring in terms of that to the middle school? So much of the middle school is about young men and women figuring out who they are and what they might like to be, that having strong Christian role models for them is essential, and having folks who will then incorporate their faith into what they teach is important. And then the next step is, how well do they know what they're going to teach? Are they going to be passionate about it? If we want our students to be lifelong learners, we need to hire teachers, in my opinion, who are lifelong learners, who continue to learn more, continue to grow, continue to adjust what they're doing to make it a more engaging experience. And then find folks who we feel like will be a good part of the team. We only have a relatively small number of teachers in the middle school, and so it's so important that we all work well together. And so those are the first 3 things that I look for.
Yeah. And then in that faith piece, so I want to hear from Warren and Amy also, but how do we discern that? How are some of the ways that we go about taking the measure of someone? It's such a personal thing, and it's hard, but what are some of the ways, and that's a question maybe for all 3 of you, because it's so central to our mission, and we're conscious that, and it's very difficult to measure that in a person, but we do want to be discerning. How do you do that? Warren?
From the first review of a resume, I'm looking for indicators of a vibrant faith. Have they been involved in a youth group ministry, or have they led a Sunday school class? And some resumes don't indicate that, but they certainly, the candidates have that experience. And so partly, if you see a reason to reach out to a candidate, these are things I'm listening for. I love to ask candidates, it's actually really an honor to do so, to ask, would you mind talking to me about your faith story? And you just learn so much about a candidate, and you hear some really, sometimes some heartbreaking stories, and some really uplifting, encouraging stories. And there's often a vulnerability there, and a humility. But as they talk about their relationship with Jesus and ways that they've learned to lean on him, the scripture that they read each morning, these are great indicators that this is a person with a vibrant faith.
Yeah. I think it's one of the privileges of my job, because I'm involved in these conversations too, not usually the first conversation now, but I interview everyone that comes through, and being able to ask that question and hear those stories is such a privilege. I've heard how God has worked in people's lives, and it's so different, but it's really powerful to hear. I know one of the things that I was talking to my wife, Desiree, the other day, just about, we were talking about being grandparents, and I have heard how in these stories what an impact so many grandparents have had in the lives of, I've just seen that as a theme, because we ask, like, who have been important spiritual influences in your life, and I'll often hear about grandparents. And it's just things like that I feel like is a huge privilege to be part of those conversations. Amy, what as you discern that Christian faith, how do you do that?
I think it's important to have a conversation with teachers to hear how they see the developmental piece of a child's faith, and how they can make that relevant based on their own personal experiences with Christ and who they know Christ to be in their lives. TK through 6, that looks very differently. And the relevancy of who God is very important at each stage in the lower schools. So I appreciate hearing from teachers how they view the age that they're going to be teaching spiritually and what God is calling them to do in the lives of the children in their classroom.
Yeah. Other thoughts about, we got off onto the faith question. Thank you, Matt, for pointing us in that direction. The larger question was, what are we looking for in teachers? Other thoughts?
Lifelong learner is important in the lower schools, someone who can convey excitement and enthusiasm around learning to read or understanding math or understanding the history of Mesopotamia and being able to convey that in a Trinity-friendly way, understanding the importance of Charlotte Mason and how that looks in the lower school, the opportunities for kids to experience the indoor learning and outdoor learning. I really am excited when a teacher makes those connections and is willing to share that enthusiasm with the class.
And how do you learn about those things? Just in the conversation with the teacher in the interview? And
I usually like to ask a question about a memorable student that they had, and then learn about that student, why that student was memorable to that teacher, and then convey to the applicant that where we see children and how we understand them through the Charlotte Mason eyes, we ask questions and I give them the framework of who Charlotte Mason was so that they can begin to understand what it looks like to teach at Trinity in the lower school.
yeah, that's great. Warren, do you add anything to that?
I love to listen to candidates describe the way they design learning experiences. Pedagogy is such an important part of teaching, and to understand the way they think about learning, the degree to which they're thinking about the students and the ways that are effective for engaging them in their studies. That's really important. So of course, we do a demo lesson. The candidate's going to come in and do that. But we've set that up in advance with an emphasis on collaboration. We've made it clear to the candidate that we really value that among our faculty and encourage the candidate to be back and forth with the department chair or others in the department to be thought partner with them. And so by the time the demo lesson happens, we often have a really good sense of the teacher already. And then following that, I love to ask the candidate after that demo lesson, how did you feel that went? Were you surprised by anything? It's an odd thing to be dropped into someone else's class and do this thing. If you had a mulligan, is there anything you might do a little bit differently? If it were your class, what would you do next? So that's a rich conversation where you're learning many things about a candidate. Among them, even just kind of coachability. You know, how interested are they in really being thought partner with folks?
Yeah. How reflective they can be on their own practice.
That's right.
As well as how open to feedback from others. Yeah. That's good. I do that too when I have a chance to observe the lesson, which is not as often anymore. But I always like it when a candidate will ask me for feedback. You know, that's a really strong sign to me. Yeah. But that's great. Our written application is not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not.
Can you all talk about that a little bit? I don't know that our parents know what candidates have to go through just to get to the first interview. Dr. Hall, you want to?
I think it's a tremendously valuable tool once it is finished. And I have more than once had to coax a candidate to complete it. But it's very rich in terms of giving us a sense a lot of the time about their Christian faith, how they've been influenced by people in their lives, the things that they've read that have been important to them, the opportunities they've had to exercise their faith. And I learn a lot from that application about how well I think a person will fit in at Trinity. And I think that there's a lot to be gained from it, but it does take a long time to do.
Yeah. Does either of you care to comment on it?
I think I would just add, when I'm talking with a candidate who has not applied yet, and I'd say more and more, that is a part of my experience as we're using national placement agencies to help us cast a wider net. I will, with a degree of humor, say, with some apology, need you to know that following this conversation, if you're interested, we do have a very chewy application.
Chewy, I like that.
Chewy, and it's going to take you some time to do it, but we consistently hear that doing it is itself a kind of learning experience and helpful and meaningful for the candidate and certainly for us.
I've heard that too, and I like that when I hear that from a candidate, that this helped me reflect on my own calling and vocation, and
Right.
yeah. I often go to, quickly, if I've only got a minute to look at an application, I go to that question. It says, what books have you read in the last 12 months that you didn't have to read for a class?
Right.
I think that's just a telling question to give some sense. It's just a small window into the life of the mind of the teacher, and what goes on in the minds of our teachers is so important as lifelong learners, and we are trying to, in a number of different ways, take the measure of who these folks are. I would be really proud, we can't do this because it's confidential, but to publish the list of books that our current faculty, when they filled out their application, were reading. I think it would just be a window into the richness of the intellectual and personal, relational richness of our faculty. Could we talk just a little bit, Warren, you mentioned the search firms that we're using, the national search firms. Let's just talk about those briefly, and that is fairly new for Trinity in the life of the school. We have not used them a lot, and I think primarily, at least from my end, because they are not explicitly Christian search firms. And so trying to sort and sift for teachers who have that indispensable Christian faith, we anticipated being harder, but I think we are now reaching out and using them. Maybe talk a little bit about why and how that's working, and how we do a filter for Christian faith even through those agencies.
So, we use two large firms. They give us a much wider net. I talked to a woman this year from Alaska who I normally wouldn't have in any other fashion met. And it was an opportunity to explore her faith and to think about whether Trinity was a good fit for her as her family thought about moving all the way back to the East Coast. I think the application helps us a lot with understanding whether the candidates that we approach through these firms are going to be a good fit for Trinity. I think the application gives them a good sense of who we are and what's important to us. And so I've enjoyed a few conversations that I've had through these groups, and it certainly has brought me people and opportunities that I would not have had in another way if we simply advertised it on our website and waited for word of mouth to bring us teachers.
Yeah. Warren, anything to add to that? Or?
Yeah, one thing that I've got a multi-paragraph email all teed up for this search or that I will send out to a candidate that I've seen on one of these placement agency websites that looks interesting. And the message is, here's who we are. Here's a link to our doctrinal commitments that all faculty embrace. Here's who we are as a Christian school. Here's our mission. If this looks like a place that could be exciting for you, please email back, and I'd love to talk. So that's an email that I find more and more I'm sending out. I agree with you fully. We've typically been a place that found our candidates locally. Every one of the teachers I've hired this spring has come from outside this area.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And I would add too, I don't know about you all, but I've heard over and over how meaningful and helpful these candidates have found the videos on our website to be. It's been really interesting to hear that. And it's especially encouraging when I hear someone talk about having drilled down deeper into our website and found helpful things there. That lets me know, okay, this is a candidate that sounds really interested.
Yeah, I agree. I was talking to someone this morning, and she mentioned that she had been on and had read the section on the 6th grade and the cupcake story in the 6th grade, and I was like, wow, this is somebody who has really drilled down, and I like that. That's great. Well, and we also had a diversity hiring fair here at the school. Matt, you tell us a little bit about that.
So for the last few years, the group of about 7 or 8 Triangle independent schools have been putting on a hiring fair with diversity as its primary focus, although other folks come. And each school's sort of been taking a turn hosting it, and we hosted it this year. And we invited lots of people from lots of different places and advertised in lots of different sort of places that are not common for Trinity to recruit faculty to come and spend some time with these schools. And obviously having the chance to talk to 7 or 8 schools at one time is a useful thing, and met a lot of interesting people over the last 3 years, and talked about possibilities with them and kept their information if we didn't have a good fit for them at the moment, but might have one in the future. And I think it's been a tremendous opportunity for us to make connections with groups and institutions that we didn't know so well, and to hopefully find some great faculty.
Yeah. Yeah, we had someone here this week who was, we'd met at that fair, who was in, and I sat with a group of faculty and talked with her, and so I'm thankful for that. And we are trying to increase the number of candidates of color who are applying, and that's certainly something that's a goal for us. So as we close out this conversation, I just wonder if there are any stories from this spring that you'd like to tell, or to just give our families a window into what you're up to and the kinds of things, the conversations and the transitions that are going on. Warren, you want to start?
Yeah, one story that was just fantastic. We were watching the demo lesson of a woman we brought in for Noella Frost's replacement. She's headed to Charlotte to join her husband, who's his job transferred him over there, and
She gave us an extra year.
She did give us an extra year.
Even after he moved already last year.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was just the funniest moment to watch this candidate almost being a clone of Noella Frost, to the point that the students were turning to her and saying, "Ms. Frost, she's you," which was a little, it was funny. It was funny to watch Mrs. Frost process that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to see that kind of handoff too. That happens from one teacher to another.
Yeah, and deeply, I think, reassuring to the students who just love Mrs. Frost.
Yeah.
And she's coming. So,
Yeah, we're excited to have her. That's
We should
great.
probably add that too. Yeah.
And Matt, you have a story?
Yeah, so we're excited about a new math teacher that we'll hopefully have, if all continues to go well, in this fall. When he was here to visit, I asked him if he wanted to observe a class, and he said, "Only if I can help." And so he joined Miss Furr's algebra class and jumped right in and helped her as she taught the lesson, to work with a few students who he could see were struggling. And they really hit it off and worked well together, and they're excited about how they can take the middle school math group and make it stronger and work together to help students who might be struggling, and also students who might need a little more challenge. And I'm really excited for the possibilities and the things that he'll bring to Trinity in August.
Yeah, that's great. Amy?
I've had the opportunity to talk to a number of candidates who are looking forward to and anticipating the opportunity to learn about the uniqueness of the lower school's curriculum. That can be Singapore math and taking on the learning curve for that curriculum, or it can be unit studies and science and history. And the 5th grade teacher that we've hired is excited about those new opportunities and looking forward to being a member of the Trinity team, both in 5th grade and then also in the wider community. So I think it's an exciting time of the year that we get to see teachers that want to be here, candidates that have come and taken time to learn more about Trinity and to visit and to go through the interview process, and then also just to prayerfully consider each one of those candidates.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking that the work of hiring is just the first part of this, right? We helping orient new teachers, even teachers that have, maybe 10 years of experience coming into a place like Trinity. It takes a while to learn the culture, to know how the mission is delivered. And I was just thinking of the examples that you all started with. Each of those teachers had wonderful ways of being onboarded and mentored and helped in different ways. We have a formal program, but a lot of times informal things too. Ricky Oliver, how did Ricky learn about Trinity? How does that work for
The
him?
key to Ricky Oliver's coming to Trinity and settling in so well was Spencer Dix.
Yeah.
He did such a tremendous job. One of the challenges of Trinity is that we're a small place, so teachers have to share classrooms. But that's also one of the biggest blessings, that the 2 middle school history teachers spend their days together. They watch each other teach. They talk about lessons. They offer encouragement. They offer critiques sometimes. They know how to answer questions for each other, and it really helps new teachers to settle in. They know there's someone right there if they need something in a hurry. They also are comfortable to ask, and Spencer and Ricky's relationship is fabulous. And because of what Spencer invested in Ricky initially, Ricky settled in nicely and is a tremendous blessing to us, and now Ricky blesses Spencer all the time as well. And so it's a great gift.
Yep. And Evan Kate learned Trinity in the humanities department, right?
That's right. Yeah. A department with really wonderful colleagues and a real culture of collaboration and sharing ideas. In fact, that department has a long practice now of what they call critical friends groups, where they'll devote an entire department meeting to one teacher bringing a lesson, and there's a very formulaic process for explanation and reflection and receiving feedback. And that all on its own just helps to sustain and further develop that kind of informal mentoring and assistance and collaboration. Yeah.
The lower school is in the early stages of planning a new teacher scavenger hunt for in-service in August. And we'll have current teachers take on different components of being a Trinity teacher, whether it's Charlotte Mason or a nature study, or whether it is Singapore math, and they'll travel around the lower school building to get to know other teachers and visit their classrooms and learn a little bit about Trinity, but also build a collaborative spirit among the teachers so that they'll know where to go if they need to have an IT question answered, or if they want to know a little bit more about narration or picture studies, or how do we work with this particular concept in Singapore math. So we're looking forward to what we're going to call a scavenger hunt, and just give teachers, new faculty, the opportunity to blend in and become a part of our group as quickly as possible.
That's great. And of course, we do a formal new teacher orientation in August before the in-service. And last year, Lori Stepp, as a leadership development program, looked at teacher mentoring here and made some suggestions for changes. So it's something we're constantly thinking about. And Well, I want to thank the three of you for talking with me today, and I want to thank you for the work you do. This is a lot of work. It is hard work, but it's good work, and it's some of the most important work we do together. And I think you all do it really well, and I trust you in this work, and we work together. And love the partnership, and thank you for leaning into this, because our teachers are the ones who deliver the mission. And you are the ones who find them and onboard them and keep them. So thank you. Non-Nobis.